Welcome to our post-cabinet briefing for Friday, September 4th, 2015. The brief this morning will be given by the Minister of State within the Ministry of the Presidency, Honorable Joseph Harmon. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Archer. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, I will brief you on matters which were dealt with at the last cabinet meeting on Tuesday. That would have been the 1st of September 2015. At that cabinet meeting, His Excellency the President reported on his engagement with the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Barrett Jagdeo, and informed Cabinet that at the meeting with the Leader of the Opposition that he'd raised 5 broad areas for bilateral cooperation in the interest of the nation. Those areas were cooperation in the fields of agriculture, budget, border activities, national unity, and security. The President reminded that Article 13 of our Constitution was almost an injunction requiring us to embrace inclusionary democracy. He felt, therefore, that it was his obligation as the President and his constitutional responsibility to engage the opposition in talks that would lead to cooperation in the interest of the nation. The President also briefed Cabinet that Mr. Jagdeo committed his party to cooperation in the area of border matters, and that the other areas that were raised by the President will require consultation with his other colleagues in the PPPC before he is able to make any statements further on the matter. The President did also indicate that he was very pleased that the Leader of the Opposition responded to his invitation and attended the meeting. After the preliminary remarks by His Excellency, the rest of the meeting was chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Moses Nagamutu. At the meeting, Cabinet was briefed by the Honorable Minister of Governance on a memorandum which proposed the preparation of a strategic, legislative, regulatory, and institutional arrangement for the management of upstream activities in the petroleum sector. The policy, he explained, was geared towards attracting and securing investment in the upstream operations activity in the oil and gas sector. That is to say, activities involving the petroleum production, storage, refining, and marketing of those products. Great emphasis in this regard will be placed on ensuring that the necessary arrangements are put in place for the effective and efficient development of the sector. The Honorable Minister indicated that the Commonwealth Secretariat had already provided some assistance in this regard, and it was a matter of now us agreeing on an updating of that policy. The United Nations Development Program has also offered technical cooperation and assistance by providing us with some experts who are likely to come to Guyana in October to assist us in this work. You'll recall that early in the week, the Honorable Minister of Governance reported that a team from Exxon had been here in the country, and they had expressed the company's continued commitment to proceed from the point of exploration to production of oil and natural gas. Also, at that meeting, Cabinet gave its no objection to contracts as follows. A contract for the procurement of 1,818,440 liters of bitumen for the Demerara Harbor Beach Corporation's asphaltic plant at Garden of Eden. This is intended to ensure that there is enough asphalt for among the number of projects which will be undertaken by the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. Already you can see some work is already being done on the streets of Georgetown and in other communities, and this is intended to push that, that development. A contract in the sum of $409,149,000 was awarded to Sol Guyana Inc. A contract for the rehabilitation of community roads at Main and Cross Street, Caneville, within the Golden Grove Diamond NDC area on the east bank of the Demerara in Region 4, also received its no objection. The contractor, H. Knott and Sons, and the contract sum $68,695,802. Cabinet was briefed about the process by which these contracts were awarded and was satisfied that the process was transparent and that the best company won the bid. Cabinet was also briefed and gave its approval to the appointment of certain boards in the publication sector and within the Ministry of Communities. The boards of the Guyana National Newspapers Limited, the National Communications Network, and the Guyana National Broadcasting Authority. Those boards were received its approval from Cabinet. Will now be gazetted in the official gazette. It also gave its approval for the gazetting of the boards for the Central Housing and Planning Authority and the Guyana Water Inc. Cabinet was also briefed on the matter involving the reduction of the toll on the Berbice River Bridge and had an extensive discussion on the matter. A memorandum produced or presented by the Minister of Public Infrastructure proposed the introduction of a water taxi service between the west and the east bank of the Berbice River. The discussions on this matter went very long into the afternoon, and Cabinet gave its go-ahead, its green light to the establishment of a river taxi service, primarily to allow for the students and the elderly who are affected by, in large measure, by the refusal of the Berbice Bridge Company, Inc. to accept the government's proposal for a lowering of the toll. Cabinet also mandated the Minister of Finance to continue to engage with the Berbice Bridge Company, Inc. to ensure that the reduction of the toll takes place. So this is really where we are with that matter, and we are of the firm belief that very soon the bridge company, who indicated that they had referred the matter to the shareholders of the company, that they will see the light and agree to have the toll reduced. Cabinet was also briefed on several other matters, among which was the question of the collapse of a mining pit at Jumbie Creek in the Potaro in region number 8. That is a matter which the President, as you know, expressed his grave concern for the frequency at which these mining pit collapses were taking place, and the fact that a commission of inquiry had been launched into a previous collapse, which said inquiry had made certain recommendations, and I believe that Minister Trotman did indicate that he will address these matters in full with the press after he would have actually submitted the report that was done by Dr. Grantley Waldron and a team of experts in that regard. Ladies and gentlemen, I have kept the brief short this morning so that I can give you an opportunity to ask more questions. As you are aware that these press briefings go up to 11:30, so today I avail myself of a long period of answering questions from you.
Good morning, Mr. Harmon. Kurt Cabell, News Source. In relation to the water taxi service, could you say, obviously government would have to put in some amount of infrastructure and procure the boats. Could you say what time frame you're looking at for the commencement? And could you also say if there will be private operators or government will take sole control?
Usually what happens in these matters, government provides the infrastructure and the regulatory framework within which these things occur. The indication that we had from the Honorable Minister of Public Infrastructure that there was going to be a pilot project involving at least 2 of these launches, the covered launches which you see operating between Vreeden Hoop and Georgetown, and that depending on the outcome of that pilot project, government would be disposed to providing or to authorizing for that matter, a large number of these vessels. But the government is not going to be providing the vessel. The government will basically provide the infrastructure and the regulatory arrangements for private entities to be engaged in this matter. And we expect that a committee will look at the matter over this weekend, comprising the representatives from the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Social Protection, the Ministry of Public Security. They will journey up to the site that is identified and put in place the arrangements that are necessary, having regard at all times to the safety and the security of the persons who have to travel on those taxis.
Second question, you've also talked about the green light given for several boards, including NCN, Chronicle, GNBA. Could you at least say who are the chairpersons of these boards?
The chairpersons. Yes, I can give you that. These are the persons who have been identified, and as I said, they become official when it is published in the official gazette, which we hope to do very shortly. The chairperson identified for the Guyana National Newspapers Limited is Mrs. Jean LaRose. The chairperson identified for the National Communications Network Inc., Mr. Bishwa Pandey. The chairperson identified for the Guyana National Broadcasting Authority, Mr. Leonard Craig.
GWI?
CHPA and GWI, I will provide you with that information later.
Harmon. You spoke about the oil and gas sector. There are talks that Guyana will be purchasing oil from Trinidad and Tobago. Could you confirm this and say whether or not it has begun? And could you say how it will affect our economy, given the arrangement we had with the Petro-Caribbean?
Yes. Honorable Minister of Public Infrastructure, Mr. David Patterson, did in fact brief Cabinet on this issue. As you know, Guyana had been purchasing fuel from Venezuela under the Petro-Caribbean arrangement, and that from time to time we've had issues with respect to the on-time delivery of fuel under that arrangement. A few weeks ago, the vessels that had gone to Venezuela to collect fuel, they were actually not provided with the fuel on time. And this type of on and off arrangement, we had to ensure that we have an alternative arrangement put in place to ensure that we did not have a shortage of fuel in Guyana. So in that regard, we made arrangements with Trinidad and Tobago to purchase fuel from them, and in fact, fuel was purchased. So we have both arrangements in place. We have a standby arrangement which we utilize from the Trinidad and Tobago, and the Petro-Caribbean arrangement which is by contract, an arrangement that is in place. We do not feel that this arrangement will put in jeopardy any of the users of petrol, of fuel in the country. In fact, it is the government's commitment to ensure that there is a reliable and a regular supply of fuel to drive industry in this country. And we, as a government, will do what is necessary in the public interest to ensure that the wheels of industry continue to turn.
The arrangement with Trinidad, could you say if it's going to be permanent, and in comparison of buy-in rates, how does that work out? Is it feasible?
It is in fact feasible. In fact, the terms are, I can say that the terms are very favorable for us. And I believe that we have a commitment from that country for the supply of petrol in the event. They are also aware, of course, of our commitment to the Petro-Caribbean facility, and that in the event that we have a shortfall or we have a problem with that Petro-Caribbean facility, that the Trinidad facility will be there. As I said, it is the financial arrangements are no less favorable than that which we receive under the Petro-Caribbean arrangement.
Mr. Harmon, of your statements, the APNU AFC, while in opposition, criticized the government for appointing political persons to certain posts. And already in 3 regions, we've seen persons who were on the coalition's list at the last elections being appointed as REOs, the most recent, Dr. Ramaya. How do you justify these appointments?
Well, the PPP, they're known for double standards. We have said that in appointments which require qualification, require certain processes, that must be followed. The appointment of an REO, is not one which requires a public service approval. The REOs have always been quasi-political. It's always been like that. The REOs are contracted. They've opted to be contracted employees. All of the REOs, that was their choice. As I indicated at the previous press conference, that when you are in a contract, your employment is covered by the terms and conditions of that contract. So that in the areas where it was in the view of the government that those persons who were acting in the capacities as REO, that they were their jobs, that the performance was not consistent to the standard which was expected of us, by us, that those persons we had to make changes. It was important that the government's program be not stymied, that there be no blockages in the way to providing the quality of service which, as a government, we have committed to giving the people of this country. The situation you spoke about in Region 6 is one which, of course, since we came into office, we have been looking at it very carefully. There are several reports which are being investigated about contract awards of contracts in that area. And it was our view, because of the sums of money that we are going to be spending in that region, the fact that in this budget we have a very short, a very narrow window to provide a certain level of service between now and December, that we did not want anybody in position that will affect the flow of resources that will go to the people. We believe that as a government, we have a right to ensure that we have the right people in the right places to deliver the quality of service that we expect of them.
Marcel, can you use the mic and make sure it's on?
Follow up to that question, Mr. Harmon. Only recently, that is when your government took office, we had the Minister of Communities, Mr. Balkan, saying loudly that posts such as REOs, and he made reference particularly to Region 8 that had Mr. Harsawa, that these posts should not have political appointees. And he was speaking at the time for the government. Why the change in views now? And how do you respond to critics, especially for disappointment with Mr. Ramaya? When you had him complaining about not getting any, how do you call it? Yes. For one, this seems like now a pacifier to Ramaya's ego, so to speak, this job appointment. How do you respond to that?
Well, what I will say to you is that you will check in the statements that are being quoted that Mr. Ramaya's passion is to work in the community where he is from. He is to work in Berbice. That is his passion. I think he did indicate that the offers which were made to him required him to travel from Berbice to Georgetown and back to Berbice. You would know, even while we were in the National Assembly in the 10th Parliament, that there were times when it became very difficult for Dr. Ramaya to be traveling from Berbice to Georgetown to ensure that he was there in the National Assembly, particularly at times when you had close votes. And so it became a difficult proposition for him. So his preference, as he did indicate, I think you will see it in the newspapers, that he preferred to work in an area where he's best suited. He prefers to work in an area where he feels his talents can be best used and where he is most challenged. He feels that if he works in Region 6, that he can bring a greater quality of service to the people of that region. And so that was his choice. And we fully support the appointment of Dr. Ramaya in that area. We believe that Dr. Ramaya's own popularity in Region 6, his own experience in Region 6, the fact that he had actually won an election against the PPP in that area on his own, demonstrates the capacity of Dr. Ramaya to perform in this very critical area of government business. The administration fully supports that appointment, and we believe that Dr. Ramaya will do well. We have always said that the REOs must support the regional administration. And we are confident that Dr. Ramaya will give the support to the region. I believe the regional chairman is on record as saying that he is prepared to govern the region in the interests of all of the people. I think Mr. Armagon, David Armagon, who is the regional chairman there, when he was sworn in by the president as the regional chairman, committed himself to working with all parties to ensure that the quality service is delivered to the people of Berbice. Since then, Mr. Armagon has been in touch with the administration on several issues as it relates to delivery of service to the people of Berbice. So I do believe that the combination of Mr. David Armagon and Dr. Amaya will do well for the people of Berbice, and they will get a higher level of service, a higher quality of service, the greater delivery of goods and services to them that they deserve under the APNU and AFC administration. The other point you raised about political appointees was that it is, as I said earlier, the appointment of REOs it's a quasi-political appointment. And the administration must be comfortable that the persons who are appointed in those capacities can deliver the quality of service which we require of the people. We will not condone REOs that are abusive, that do not carry out the mandate of the elected councils. This was a problem which we had in the previous administration. And we said so, that the REOs in some cases were stymieing the work of the councils. The REOs that were appointed by the previous administration in regions which had been won by the APNU and the AFC, that this was in fact a claim which was made by us, and it was a justifiable claim, that they were disregarding directions from the council, that they were taking direct decisions from Freedom House, and that irrespective of what the council said, they were doing their own thing. So that was a difference. That is a difference between what you are going to see from these REOs appointed under this administration and those who were appointed in the previous one. We will hold them to a higher standard of performance, and we'll hold them to a higher standard of conduct, of personal conduct in these offices.
For raise a hand if I use, just to follow up to Marcel's question, Mr. Harmon, could you say exactly why the previous REO was fired, if he was one of those who used to take instructions from Freedom House, and did he not follow procedures in the granting of contracts in the region?
As I said to you, that the REOs are contracted employees, and therefore the government of Guyana is their employer. If in fact the contract provides that if any of the parties require to terminate the contract, they can do so by giving 1 month's notice in writing, or the payment of 1 month's pay in lieu of leave, in which case the person's service can be terminated. Secondly, since the new government came into office, we have been looking very carefully at the performance of these REOs, all of them. All of the REOs we've looked at. And in some cases, you will find changes that are not just in some of the communities or the RDCs which had been won by the PPP. You will see changes even in some of the RDCs where the APN and AFC won the elections. So what we are looking for is a quality of service at that level that is standard all around, that we can be guaranteed that when resources are placed at the disposal of the RDCs, that the RDCs make decisions, resolutions for the utilization of these resources, that we do not have REOs who take it on their own and make decisions that are contrary to those which have been made by the elected councils. So what I'm saying to you is that in this particular instance, the government exercised that option of A, the contract, and B, the fact that we needed to ensure that we had somebody in the council there, at the RDC, that will be able to ensure that a faster level of service is delivered to the people of that region.
Guyana.
I just wanted a quick question for clarity on the ferry service. Well, this pilot student and elderly project taxi, will it run in co with the proposal of the opening back of the regular ferry service?
Well, this is the first step. In fact, you will recall that under the agreement which allowed for the building of the Berbice River Bridge, that is the Berbice Bridge Inc., that there is a contract to which the parties are bound. That contract, of course, I believe prohibits the use of vessels for crossing of vehicles. It does not, however, speak towards passengers. So our focus will be on ensuring that the school children and the elderly, that they get an opportunity to cross the ferry at a reduced cost. It is our interest, it is our business in government to ensure that the general public, the people who are the children, the old people of this country, who cannot afford higher costs, higher fares, that they are given this subsidy by the state. In the 2015 budget, you have seen several measures announced by the Minister of Finance that's aimed at reducing the cost of living for the ordinary people of this country. And this is a step which we are taking in that direction. This was the whole intent beyond the reduction of the toll on the Berbice River Bridge. And therefore, we will have to find creative ways of ensuring that government's intention reaches the people of this country, reaches the school children, reaches the elderly, persons who are challenged, that they can cross that river very quickly, very safely, and at a really very cheap price.
Guyana Wilbur, Kite News. Sir, were you able to determine, or has your government been able to determine as yet, if you can exercise any power or implement any creative way thus far in terms of changing the whole design or construct of the contractual arrangements for the Berbice Bridge, given the whole fact that NIS has millions of shares and the government is now made to bear the burden and may have to call on the consolidated fund to recoup those losses?
Well, it's an interesting question. What I can say to you is that the agreement with the Berbice River Bridge Company, Inc., is one which we have been looking at very closely. We believe, though, that we do not want to send a signal to any other investors that once they invest their money in something, that the government will step in and take it over. That is clearly never our intention in this matter. We have made it clear that the sums of money that will be lost to the company by reducing the fare, that government will give the bridge company a subsidy to that effect. So there's no loss insofar as the actual reduction in the toll is concerned. Of course, we're now hearing of several things like a 3-tier increase, 55% increase, and so on. Those are issues which are for further negotiation. But as far as what we're talking about now, we're talking about reducing the fare by $300 in some cases and by 10% in some other cases. But as I said to you, the company is not losing by that arrangement. We believe, though, that we will find creative ways of ensuring that government's intention in this regard is not frustrated. We believe that the conversations that are taking place now with the bridge company, that they will find a way, they will find it in their hearts to ensure that if government requests something, that you're not losing anything by it, that in fact it is something that you should consider and consider favorably. But I can say to you that we are looking at the contract and we will be engaging the directors of the Berbice River Bridge in a more direct manner to ensure that they understand quite clearly that we are the government, we are the state, and that our request should be favorably considered in some way.
Sir, but just a quick, the final question. Well, what I wanted to find out was, in addition to what you said, was there any particular reason why the finance minister was moved from being the head of NISIL and was replaced by Dr. Maurice Odom? Was there any special
The
reason for
finance
that?
minister requested to be removed because he felt that he could not be exercising ministerial supervisory control over entities and still be sitting on a board which was expected to be independent and give advice. So he did not feel he should be advising himself by sitting as a minister on those boards.
So, sir, there was no sort of consultation with the finance minister before this appointment was made?
Of course, there was consultation, but of course, you know, sometimes hindsight is always good. The minister, having reviewed it, felt that it was in the best interest of transparency that his name be removed from there. What you would recognize is that in some of those boards, there was a practice which was there before. And because of following some of these established practices, this is what you get. But I think now that we've had an opportunity to open up all of these things, we've had an opportunity to open up the appointment of boards, commissions, and agencies, that you're getting recommendations coming out from the Guyanese public at large that basically says, look, this is the way you should do this and this is the way you should do that. And when you take all of these recommendations into consideration, you come up sometimes with a different construct than you had that you'd received. So we have, as I said, become much more open. These are things that the Guyanese public in the past might not have heard about, but we are making it known to everybody. This is what we are doing, and we are happy for the criticisms which we receive. We are happy also for the commendations. They come from both sides, and we accept both in good faith because we believe that the governance of this country is a joint responsibility between the people who you elect as government and the people in themselves.
Yeah. Mr. Harmon, the former CEO of Gaisuco is threatening to take the government to court over the payment of some benefits. Could you say firstly why wasn't the benefits paid since his contract was ended prematurely, and if government is prepared to go to court and defend its position?
Well, you know that this is a position which the government will be happy to go to court on if that is the direction the CEO wants to take. As a lawyer myself, I know that when you have claims in civil matters, you also have counterclaims. And sometimes the counterclaim is bigger than the claim itself. So the CEO could proceed in the manner, the former CEO that is, he can proceed in the manner which best suits him. Just be assured that the state will respond in a firm manner in this matter.
But sir,
Thank
just
you,
a quick
ladies and
follow-up.
gentlemen.
Quick
this
follow-up,
one.
sir. Was Dr. Raj Singh informed of his discrepancies, or this was after the dismissal? Because documents have surfaced showing that he was dismissed for various reasons, but was he aware of the reasons for his dismissal?
Well, you only have to be aware sometimes of one matter. You have now an inquiry that is taking place that's turning up several other things, several other infractions of the law, infractions of the regulations, infractions of his own contract. These things are coming up, and you will have more of them. Because once you have an inquiry, people who now feel that they can speak because that person who would have been the head is no longer there, they feel free to come to you and say things to you that you may very well find that this is just about the tip of the iceberg. Thank you very much.